Okay, let's hear. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your patience. I believe we have everybody in the room now. I'd like to call this special meeting of the Lake Redstone Protection District to order. For the convenience of everybody, I would request you silence your cell phones at this time so we don't have any distractions during the meeting. I'm Mike Middlestat. I'm the Lake Redstone Protection District Chairman. Our agenda for today is welcome and introduction, dredging project update, resolution presentation, questions and comments, then we'll have the vote, announcement of the voting results. Can I have a motion to accept the agenda as presented? Chuck Eklund, do I have a second? Heidi. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Carrie?
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining this important meeting. Last year at our annual meeting, we discussed the need to dredge Lake Redstone. At that time, last August, recall that the board had done diligence, had brought up a bid, reviewed those bids, and determined not to take it to a vote for reasons being the costliness and other factors. So we went forward in this past 9-10 months and reviewed what was done. First, let's go back. What's happened since then? Dredging. It was last done in the 80s. Okay, we talked about that last year. Sediment, on average, has been building up around 3,000 cubic yards a year. Of course, we've had a couple floods that have taken place in 2008 and, of course, last year. The floods last year really dramatically impacted the lake. I think those of you who have been watching the preview slides, those captured some of the impact of that. And in fact, the board and committee went forward with an additional sediment survey last fall after the floods last year. And, it's been established that over 67,000 additional cubic yards of sediment have been moved into the bays. There's an additional amount that we haven't been able to account for that have been moved into the main body. So again, those are some of the things that we've been able to quantify. So the need that we had established last year has been exacerbated by the floods last year. And again, I think we've seen enough photos of it from the previous slideshow that, to remind us of some of the impacts and negative aspects that have impacted our lake. So what did we say we'd do last August after rejecting the bids from last year? Well, we went back. We interviewed contractors who both bid on the project last year as well as ones who did not bid. We asked them, why didn't they bid? What can we do to reduce the cost? those types of things. And through the efforts of the committee and the board and a lot of folks, we determined that, hey, the availability of disposal sites, areas to put this sediment, also called spoils, we had one last year, as you recall, with the proposal that we had. That was restrictive to contractors, having one site, the logistics with being able to bring all that sediment to one place was prohibitive, raised the cost. Through the efforts of the board and through the cooperation of landowners, we identified 6 disposal sites that were available as options in this round of bidding that was just completed. So that allowed flexibility for the contractors, which translated to a more positive bid result. Also, we allowed flexibility in terms of the type of dredging and that could be done. Last year we were considering only hydraulic dredging, sucking the stuff out. We allowed in the bid both hydraulic, mechanical dredging, or if a contractor thought it doable, to use a hybrid approach of both methods. And then also, we allowed for in the bid a longer period of time for the project to be completed, essentially up to 2 years, this summer and next year. So those key elements of flexibility allow the contractors to kind of rework their bids and go forward. So what were the results? And we'll talk about them in detail, but we've reduced the project cost over $2 million compared to the bids that we were considering last year. Last year we were at about $6.5 million when considering contingency fund and loan financing fees. This year we're at about just under $4.3 million. So again, just reviewing, what makes up project dredging? What costs go into it? Well, there's of course the bid, the contractor bid. That's the biggest component. Many of you have seen those numbers published in the papers and on the website. But in addition to that, there's a contingency fund to deal with unforeseen operational expenses that may arise during the dredging project. Most primarily related to additional sediment that the survey might not have caught and need to be taken out. Then, of course, there's the cost for borrowing money. And so those components go into the overall project cost. So where are we at? This dredging tax levy that we're considering here today is made up of those 3 components, as noted here. And the numbers that we're talking about here assume no other funding assistance. And we'll talk about, there have been multiple areas that we're looking for additional assistance. But if we put those aside and just consider the numbers without any other funding source, and also assuming that the full contingency amount that's built in is needed, we come up with $4.263 million as a project cost. The tax levy applies for up to 10 years. And the tax levy will be lowered if and when future funding that might become available, that again we'll talk about in a minute, comes available. So using the $4.263 million number, if we take that and using the 2018 assessed valuation of the lake protection assessed value, we come up with numbers like this. An annual tax increase for a $100,000 property for 10 years would be $182, okay? For a $300,000 house, it would be $547, okay? Those are just 2 example points. You could probably use the $100,000 number and scale that up and apply it to your property. So those are the numbers that we're looking at. Now, how can we do better from that? What things can we do to reduce the tax levy? What things have we been looking at, and what things can reduce that tax levy? Well, not spending the entire contingency amount. You know, if there's a reduction in the construction cost, if the amount of sediment in areas is actually less than what the survey told us it would be, that would reduce the overall tax levy. We've gone to multiple agencies, including FEMA, the state, the county, and town, to look for relief, and we'll talk about in a little more detail of those efforts. And we'll be also looking for donations. So, supporting the dredging, Sauk County, John Dietz, who's a member of the Lake Protection Board, we've been working closely with John, as well as the entire Sauk County committees, and we're engaged with them to investigate what funding, what type of assistance we might be able to get from them. We're working through the process. John's been very helpful in helping guide us through working that. The feedback on that, however, would not be available until later this year, near the end of this year. The budget cycles and processing are such. State of Wisconsin, I believe it was in February, we met with Representative Kurtz and made him aware of the impacts of the floods, the economic impact of the lake on both the community, the county, and the state, just to raise his awareness and to petition for support from the state. He's gone back and is investigating possibilities of assistance from the state of Wisconsin. We'll learn of the outcome of that investigation later on in the year, hopefully by October. The DNR, there's channel grant. We talked about actually last year during this whole set of discussions. We will reapply for a channel grant, which would cover the county boat landing into the channels leading into the main body of the lake. We'll reapply for that assistance in the August timeframe. FEMA, and we have another slide on this. Based on the storms last year, we were requesting the financial aid from their public assistance program. We've met with FEMA, teams meeting with them on an ongoing basis. We've made our claim, and that's being processed. These top areas of government agency assistance, those fundings can only really be considered by these agencies if we have a committed project, meaning we approve going forward. If we do not have an approval going forward, these sources of potential funding go away. So obviously another funding source is the tax levy that we talked about. I detailed out the numbers that could be. Hopefully these other funding sources would help reduce that. Then additionally, we have private and business donations. We intend to launch a program to solicit those from the local businesses and communities in the summer. Let's talk a little bit more about FEMA. If the Protection District's claim is fully approved by FEMA, we'd expect to receive just under $900,000, which would reduce that $4.3 million down to about $3.4 million. That's a substantial set of aid if it gets approved. The decision on the FEMA would not be available until later this year, and their reimbursement into the district, if approved, would be over 2 or 3 years. So again, if the dredging resolution is not approved, we must withdraw our application to FEMA. They won't consider a non-committed project. And as it relates to the 2018 flood event, this is our window of opportunity for FEMA. We have to withdraw the application. We would not be able to submit another application if we don't have a committed project going forward. So this is a big potential source of funding to help defray the overall cost. So let's talk a little bit about the proposed dredging plan. Okay, Actually, based on the, lowest responsible bid that's been being proposed by the board, it's a mechanical dredging bid that would begin the week after the 4th of July. Actually, activities would begin before that, middle of June, to mobilize and begin staging equipment to support the project. Fundamentally, this would involve, barges, which would be used to transport spoils that are dug out, and we've got a couple pictures to kind of give you the visual. These barges would haul the spoils to a couple of lots that the Protection District owns in Morning Dove Bay, and then from there, those spoils would be offloaded to trucks, which would transport those spoils to 2 off-lake lots. The hours of operation of this would be weekdays, basically Monday through Friday, 10 to 12 hours per day. And the operations would be suspended during the holiday weekends, 4th of July and Labor Day. The planned completion with this proposal is actually October of this year. So even though the bid suggested, hey, we've got a two-year window, the proposal has a schedule which completes in October of this year. So mechanical dredging, just a couple images to show, what this is about. You've got backhoes and equipment that, are basically on barges that would, be used to extract the sediment and load it onto basically barge dump trucks that are then used to transport it to these sites in Morning Dove Bay. So what would we need to do to prepare for, and what are the impacts when executing this type of plan? Well, for the bays that are being worked on, and we'll go through a schedule here, all piers, boats, platforms, water toys and things, the bay needs to be cleared out. Needs to be cleared out before the start of dredging and until the completion of the dredging activities in that particular bay. There will be no water access to that bay that's being dredged during that time. So I'll put this up here and you could stare at it for a minute. Think about where you're located relative to these areas where dredging will take place. And then over the next few slides, we have a tentative schedule for those bays. So I'll just pause here for a moment. Okay, so this is slide 1 of 3, which show those bays. The impacted lot numbers for dredging will be provided at a later date. So knowing that those lots near the mouth of a bay, the question would come up, hey, am I going to be impacted or not? That information will be provided soon, once the schedule's locked down and we have more specificity on this. But as you can see, in general, most bays, some bays, the smaller bays, would be a day or two of impact in terms of dredging operations. Some of the larger bays are nearly a week in terms of impact, which we'll see here. So I'll pause here and then I'll do the same for the next couple of slides so that you can kind of look to see in the areas that are near you where there would be an impact. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, this information is also on the website for further review. And again, as you can see here, many of these activities are days, a handful of days in nature. Again, a couple of the larger bays are the county boat landing area that will take a longer period of time for dredging operations to complete. And then this is the third slide like this. So again, lot numbers associated with these bays will be provided at a later time. And this information's on our website. We really need to go forward with this. The time is now. Costs, as we all know, only go up. The board and committee have done I think, diligence to really get the costs down on this. We do know costs will go up. From last year's low bidder, who bid again this year, their cost went up 26% year over year. That bidder's not chosen, but just to illustrate, the costs will only go up. Most of our funding sources, as mentioned, whether FEMA, state, and such, we need a committed program. We need a committed project. The opportunity is here, especially in the case of FEMA. That opportunity is at hand to provide substantial assistance to take care of a necessary activity to keep our lake vibrant. And then, of course, there's our property values. We spoke about last year the forecasted impact of dredging or not dredging would have on property values. Well, we know that last year the protection district assessments dropped 7%, while Sauk County as a whole increased by 3%. That suggests that some of this forecast in terms of impact to our property values is happening. And actually, when you look at that 7% of the property values of the protection district, as it applies to, say, individual residents, one of the members of the committee was doing the math. This is more than 4 times, the decrease in property value is more than 4 times the cost of what the tax levy would be over 10 years to that property. So it's substantial. What happens after the vote? If we have a yes vote, the Protection District enters into contracts with Caillou and Waterworks Marine, selected contractors. The loan is secured. We continue to pursue this outside funding to help defray the cost and lower the overall dredging tax levy, executing the project, and then, of course, adjusting the general tax levy to account for this going forward. If it's a no vote, then the Protection District residents will need to decide, well, do we want to try again? Do we want to go further? Possibly that would be brought up and discussed at the August annual meeting. A new committee would need to be formed. Basically, the process would start all over. There are many timeline dependencies in terms of budgeting and contractors making bids and accepting bids, us getting together as a community to vote. All those dynamics suggest that the earliest start, if this was to begin over, would be probably 2023. So with that, that kind of concludes my update. Thank you for coming to learn, listen, and I'll hand it back to Mike.
Thank you, Carrie. I realize as Carrie was talking, I neglected to do one step on the agenda, so I'd like to correct that now. We were supposed to do introductions, so I'd like my esteemed panel here to introduce themselves, starting with Carrie.
Hi, Carrie Dudzik, member of the Dredging Committee. My wife Debbie and I, we've been on Redstone for nearly 20 years.
Dietz. I'm Sauk County Supervisor in the town of Reedsburg. This is my second time being the commissioner of the lake, and I would say that you have a very nice, a very good board, very diligent people. I'm also the finance chairman, so I will be working with this in many different ways, and if there's any more information you'd like from the county, I'll speak again.
I'm Ken Keekstra. I'm Secretary at the Lake Redstone Protection District Board. My wife Sue and I have owned property on Lake Redstone since 2002, and we've lived here full-time since 2013.
I'm Paul Burke, Commissioner on the board as well as on the dredging committee. My wife Sue and I have been here for over 20 years. 7 of the last we've been full-time.
Dick Fish, co-chair of the dredging committee. My wife Barb and I have built our house 25 years ago and have lived here also 20 years. It seems like a common denominator.
My name is Al Body. My wife Pat and I moved here in 1988 full-time, and I've been involved with the Protection District probably since 1993 or so, both as a volunteer, chairman, secretary. Right now I'm just a board member and also a consultant for a while.
Glenn Hirashi, I'm the treasurer for the Lake Redstone Protection District. My wife Becky and I have lived on the lake for about 20 years.
Ramon Demonsky, your town chair. I sit on the Lake Redstone Protection District. I'm trying to work with them as much as I can. I've only been a chair for 4 years, just starting my 5th term. Doing what I'm working with them the best I can.
Hi, my name is Janelle Scoyan. I'm with Ayers Associates, and I've been working with the Lake District for about 5 years with the board and some other members that are in the room. Very dedicated board, very interested in getting all the information available, and we've been working to put the plans together to get the dredging project out.
Anders Hellquist, counsel for the district on this dredging project. I'm not voting, I'm just advising on voting matters.
I'm Al Dunn with Waterworks Marine.
Good morning. My name is David Rolls. I'm the general manager of Youth Services.
Okay, I move we adopt the following resolution. Shall the Lake Redstone Protection District, Town of Laval, Sauk County, Wisconsin, be authorized to borrow pursuant to Chapter 33.31 of the Wisconsin State Statutes in the amount not to exceed $3,700,000 for the purpose of dredging sediment from up to 25 bays in Lake Redstone, to levy an annual irrepealable tax against all taxable properties within Lake Redstone Protection District to pay the principal and interest of the indebtedness incurred when due for the above referenced dredging. Tax to be levied based on all taxable property within the district, includes but not limited to land and improvements. Enter into contracts with the lowest responsible bidder for the completion of the dredging project. Can I have a second? Okay. We will now open the question and answer period based on the sign-up sheet. As noted by the agenda, that discussion will be limited to 30 minutes, so we'll try to get to as many people as possible. So I have 9:51, so I'll cut that off at 10:25. We ask that you come to the microphone by the number you signed up. You are limited to one question or comment per person, and limited to 3 minutes, including response. Due to the number of people signed up, we ask that you keep your comments short and try and do it in less than 3 minutes if you can, so we can get to everybody. So we'll start with number one. It looks like Patrick Langford, followed by Jim Schroeder, and then John Bowl. So if you guys could come up and start the question and comment period, please.
Patrick Langbein. Oh, gee, didn't mean yell at it. Informally, basically, worked for the government for 30 years, taking care of construction contracts. And this contract that I looked, the first step on it is not correct. It should not be the way it is on a contract as far as the costs come out. Costs come out on a contract, and this contract starts off with mobilization. Mobilization cannot be put in unless it has a demobilization. That way, they can bring in the cost on the mobilization only. They can bring a high cost, which the low bid is 40% already. And that's just bringing equipment in, that's all. And they're going to get asked for 40% of the cost contract. And then there's a 2-year contract, all right? Where's the cost of material? Take it out of here to get rid of that material. I mean, not the material, it's equipment, basically, not material. So on mine, as far as I'm just concerned about the contract, it's not a correct contract. You're forcing out, giving out money, and for just bringing the material here, not even doing anything, all right? And one other thing, when you bring in material like that, equipment, you got to prove you own it, not rent it, okay? And now all our contracts always came with mobilization, demobilization, and it's usually the same cost. And when you see that, that cost of mobilization drops like a lead balloon, because they find out they got to pay the same at the end. All right? That's all I got to say about it.
Is this on? Oh, now it is. I'll respond to that. So the line item for mobilization, if you look at the measurement and payment spec, it is for mobilization and demobilization. In the specifications, which are publicly available, and anybody, if they have specific comments, I can point them to that section at the end. There's a payment schedule related to that. So when the contractor does mobilize, they are not entitled to be paid for that entire mobilization line item. There's a schedule in there where they get paid a certain amount when they mobilize. Then after a certain percentage of the project's complete, maybe 25% of the work's done, they'll get paid for 40% of the mobilization item. I think that's about what it is. And also 5% of the project total cost up until 50% of the project's worth. So 5% of half of $3.3 million is held until the end of the project, until substantial completion, just to guarantee that if there are issues that the contractor has to go back and fix, that the Lake District has kind of some impact on making sure they get that work done. So they'll hold that amount until the work's completed, if that makes sense.
Where my property is, I'm very happy with the depth of the water, and I have a sand base for the kids to play in, and I haven't seen any sediment come in, and I'm where the red line shows, looks like they're going to come through there. I just wondered why, and if I can save you some money and have them go past me.
Yes, if there are minor edits to refine the limits of the bays, especially at the ribbons towards the end, if you feel like you don't need that area to be dredged, please inform the board. Their contact information via email is probably best, right, Mike? And we will refine those limits based on that. A lot of the bays we didn't want to trim too early, just trying to catch all the properties that really did need the work. Thanks.
For to be pre-dredging survey done, because the sediment is movable. And so we will reassess right before we initiate the dredging process as well. Thank you. Are you John?
Yep, I'm John Bull. The whole problem, a lot of this I've seen, I was watching the films and a lot of that, you said this is a 10-year project. What properties what taxes are paying for it? Just the lake properties? Just the lake properties?
Yes.
Okay. If my property is going to pay for it, pardon?
Lake Protection District properties.
Okay. Does that
Well,
cover anybody outside of Lake Redstone?
No.
No. Okay, if the Lake Redstone people are going to pay for it, then maybe Lake Redstone would like to have it closed for a non-public lake that we have to pay for ourselves, which is wrong. The whole problem is you don't let us fix our lands. The Sauk County stops people from fixing the lands down by the lakes. I've tried many years to fix my land, and they say no. I've been sued 3 times by Sauk County. I've won all the time. I tried to fix my land. They won't do it. All these culverts that are coming in here are just pouring more sludge in. You said 10-year project, okay? I meant 10 years to pay it off. Then we get done paying for it, we're going to pay again. Because we're not taking care of the problem that's starting this. These big monster things that are showing and letting all the dirt come in here, running off the mountains, running off the farmlands, which are coming here. Until that problem is, you can solve that problem, there's no sense to dredging. I've lived on 3 different lakes, and we've dredged on 3 different lakes. First, we fix the problem, then we dredge.
Ken?
In the mic, God. What's that?
The Lake District the Lake District Board has done a lot over the years. They've been working with farmers in the watershed to do all kinds of repairs. They've created grass waterways. They've encouraged the use of cover crops. They've encouraged the use of no-till agriculture. We've made, over the years, sediment basins in a number of the inlet streams. And these efforts continue even to the present day. There's now a producer-led cooperative being led by the ag folks in Juneau County that are trying to work among the producers themselves to use conservation that will prevent the entrance of sediment into Lake Redstone. It will never be zero, but a lot has been done. The big problem comes with enormous storm events like happened in 2008 and in 2018. There is almost nothing that can be done to prevent the kinds of sediment that come in when you have events like that. It just simply is not cost effective to prepare for a 100-year flood, especially when 200-year floods come in 10 years.
But it's not fair to the lake people. It's not fair. You guys still, I mean, I live on a piece of property.
One comment per person, please.
I didn't see that in the rules and regulations of this meeting. The whole problem is that this meeting should be open to these people to talk and face their opinions out here and not be subject to just one question or one statement. He's answered me, I'm trying to re-answer him.
Jeff Stevens, please.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. My name's Jeff Stevens. We've been on the lake since 1967. So we've seen a lot of storms here and a lot of flooding. And when we initially put our first pier in our bay, it was 24 feet long, and if you jumped off the end of the pier, you had 6 feet of water. Now we have a 40-foot pier to accomplish the same thing. If this current condition continues, why, we're just going to have a bridge across our bay to our neighbors, and there won't be any traffic in the bay. I urge everybody to go forward with this. This lake is always going to have sediment in it, and we need to address that. And I urge everybody to vote yes on this today. Thanks.
Randy Raymond.
Yes, my question relates to the FEMA funding and the potential to secure that. In the board's considered opinion, what's the likelihood of us actually getting federal funds to offset it? It represents over 20% of the total budget, right? So a huge swing factor for us. And I don't want you to put a percentage on it. Tell me whether it's a slam dunk, a coin toss, or a Hail Mary.
Thanks, Randy. We've been working diligently with a FEMA representative and are ready to submit to the FEMA headquarters. According to the representative, we have an excellent chance of getting funds.
Terrific.
Which I must add was different from his opinion in the first meeting. He goes, "You want me to pay for taking dirt out of your lake? Are you crazy?" Okay, Brett, I can't read the last name here. Okay. Paul Pepper. Will be next.
At last fall's meeting, we had a DNR guy that ran for the board. I can't remember what his name was or whatever, and can't quote exactly what he said, but from my recollection, he said we need to secure the lake a lot better for erosion control. He goes, before you dredging would be a last resort. And so what is your solution? What's your plan if dredging does go through and we get another one of these storms? Because it's not a question of whether if it's going to happen, it's when. If we dredge and we get that 67,000 cubic yards back in there, what's your plan?
So the person who ran from the board, for the board last year was Fred Nickel. I don't think Fred is here. If he is, I don't want to speak for him, but I spoke with him on this week. He called to ask a couple of questions. First of all, let me correct, he was not from the DNR. He actually is a county supervisor, I think, in what county? Adams County. He has a lot of experience working with the DNR. But he asked a few questions and was actually quite satisfied that the board has done due diligence. There is nothing to prevent, and I want to emphasize this. I mean, I can't sit here and tell you that if we have another flood like we had last year, that we have in place preventative measures that will prevent sediment from coming back into the lake. It will come back into the lake. There's no doubt about it. On an average year, we've done a lot to limit sediment entering into the lake on average years. Lake Redstone is an impoundment. It's a man-made lake. It will always have these kinds of problems as long as it exists.
And then my comment is, going through a home equity loan, just got my house appraised, and the property value went up. My appraiser, his company's not XYZ, what, you know, the companies that you guys post or whatever. His name's Mel Hammer, and the lake had no bearing on my house value. It's the value of my house.
Tim Jackson.
Either way, I feel the same way. I don't feel there's not enough prevention, and why is it only the lake people that have to pay for it when it's a public lake? There should be more disbursement on the costs, so that's my comment.
Thank you. As we mentioned, we're working on the disbursement of the costs, and unfortunately, it requires a committed project to go to these other sources. We can't do it the other way around.
You keep answering in circles.
They have limited.
You're answering in circles. Stop that to people. You're lying to them.
I'm
Yes,
not
you are.
lying
You're
to them.
talking in circles. You need to fix this problem before you do anything else. You look at them pictures. Go back and look at them pictures and see all that.
Sir, you've had your comment. We must move on. Lloyd Charles?
I want to agree with what he said. I don't have to come up to the microphone, but other people could pay for this besides just the property owners.
Thank you. Priscilla Bondhus? Thank you. Ron Simpson? Then Mike Libby?
Okay, well, it would not generate the kind of funds we're talking about. There seems to me there should be some type of user fee to utilize the lake. We have boats that come from all over the place, several different counties away, or if not around the country, to fish here. You go by the docks and so forth, and they charge $25 a year to use the docks, which is ridiculous. So there should be some type of, either a sticker, Lake Redstone sticker, or some type of way of generating funds from people that actually come in and use the lake from other areas.
We pursued a user fee. The county runs the boat landing, and they insist on uniform fees for all the boat landings in the county. We pursued it. We were denied. Priscilla? Or am I? That was Ron, right? Mike Libby, sorry. Then Jean Ramallah.
First, I just want to thank you all, the committee and the board, for all your hard work. It is very much appreciated, so thank you. We actually live in one of the properties, we were in 3 of the pictures there, our house at the end of Oriole, so we have washes on both sides, and some of those have really opened up, obviously, with the rain that's come through in the last year. What was a small trickle 5 years ago is now a 3 feet deep and wide stream that's running. But as property owners with washes, are we allowed to do any sort of work in those washes ourselves to help defer the silt that might be coming in, or the sand when we do have large rainstorms in the future? Is that something that we're allowed to do with road gravel or other silt fences or things like that?
Hello? Okay, sorry, that was extremely loud. There are certain things that you can do as a property owner, and I will make sure I forward the information to the Lake District. There's some general permits. If it's a small enough repair, property owners can do it. You just need to verify that it's within a certain length, a certain width, so you're not going above those general permit for DNR requirements. I'll send them that information. The county also has some permit types like that. If it's above a certain, square footage, you would need a specialized permit, but I'll make sure I give them those permits, and then I'll give them the contact information for both state representatives and county representatives that you would want to contact, just to double check if you are interested.
Les Klingberg. Thank you. Sue Hinkle. And then Terry Moeller would be next.
I'd also like to express my thanks to the committee. It's a lot of hard work, and we really do appreciate the time that you've put into it. My question is, assuming that the project goes forward, how did you come up with the schedule of where you start and end? Our bay would be impacted in the middle of the summer, which would mean a financial impact on us to remove docks, et cetera. So was there a criteria that you wanted to start in a certain place? And could it be delayed? If we're going to end in October, could it end in November? It still wouldn't be frozen. So, thank you.
The tentative schedule we were given was by the contractor. We probably will review that and tweak it. Yes, we recognize it's an inconvenience by doing the dredging during the boating season. When we bid the project last year to do it post-boating season, it would have cost $2 million more. So what would you like us to do? Well, we had this, as was mentioned, the barges will go in and out on the protection district property at the end of Morning Dove, so they had to start with Morning Dove. Are you going to have to dig your way in? Yeah. We've got Al Dunn, the contractor here, and he's nodding his head. He's going to have to dig his way into where he has to remove. And I'm sure since he's starting there, he just worked around the lake from there. So we may make some adjustments because I have some concerns about parts of the schedule too. And if we get a commitment, we'll work those out and we'll publish them on our website as soon as we make those decisions. Thank you. Terry? And then Tamara Spear is next. Since we're trucking it off-site several miles from the lake, it will never come back.
All right, I think it's on. I won't shout at you. Both the disposal sites are not in the Lake Redstone watershed. So the disposal sites don't drain to Lake Redstone directly. They would drain downstream to the Baraboo River. But also the spoil material is not going to be placed in such a way that it's going to be eroding and flowing downstream to the Baraboo River either. It's not going to be placed in areas that are wetland, areas that are low. It's not going to be placed loosely. A lot of it might not be left there permanently as well. So those concerns are eradicated with this plan for where the spoils would go.
Okay, Terry?
Little did all of you know that when you took on this committee work and board work that you were going to work full-time for free. And so I really thank you for that. And I'm Terry Moeller. My husband Wally and I have had property on the lake for 30 years. We didn't build till 15 years later, and we've lived on the lake 7 years full-time. Now, when we originally bought our property, it was in the 80s, late 80s, and we had to pay for some of the dredging during that 10-year period. And then our taxes went down. And the first dredging, if I recall correctly, took place about 20 years after the lake was filled. And now it's been over 30 years, and lots has happened. When we purchased, many of the properties around the lake did not have stone. They did not have any of the riprapping. A lot has been done. And so hopefully with this dredging, that maybe it will last a lot longer if we don't have these horrible storms. And so I just wanted to bring that out to the attention of people who have not been here for very long. I also want everyone to know that we're all in this together. It's not where you live, on a bay or on the main part of the lake, or what you paid for your house originally, or what you'll be able to sell it for. We're all for one and all one for all. Thank you very much.
Mary Wagner.
So thank you for all your hard work. I just wanted to speak in favor of the project. We live on the 18 main section, coming down from the county put in. And with this last storm, we saw all kinds of debris and that kind of thing come into that channel. And so at this point, it's getting tricky for people to be able to launch their boats and come in there. And I think it's really important to keep up this lake, do what we can to kind of just keep the property in good shape and not just end up with sort of a swamp in a few years. So thank you very much.
That's the end of our question and comment section. Ken? Yes. Please come to the microphone.
My name's Don McCune, and I just want to thank each and every one of you. I know what it's taken for you guys to bring this to this point, and it's been a lot of hard work, and I want to thank you, and I'm sure a lot of people do want to thank you too. And I just want the people to know that I know you want to address the problem of the silt coming into the lake, but meanwhile, what happens to the lake while you're trying to address that? And I would personally like to invite you. I'm the chairman for stream sampling, so I go out and I see what all these little streams that are coming into our lake, what they're like and stuff. Any of you want to come with me? I'd be glad to show you what's coming in and why it's coming in. I don't know how you're going to address it. Like Ken said, this lake is what it is, and it's always going to be like this. But you got to address the problem that is now, and that's dredging this lake. And it's not your lake, it's our lake. We're all together in this. When you bought on this lake, you bought, and you got to maintain this lake, just like you have to do with a car, a house, whatever. The lake needs to be maintained, and now's the chance and the time to do it. Thank you.
Separately. Janine Crockett, we're on Morning Dove, and looks like we'll be first, and I'm excited for it. Thank you for all your hard work. And the main thing to me here is when FEMA comes through, which it sounds like it's quite a positive, that's 1/5, and this is our only chance to get a 1/5 reduction in our taxes. So when they presented the costs there for a $100,000 house and the amount that is, you can take 1/5 of that off, which we will never get again, and it'll come to higher costs in the future. So please think of that. This is our chance.
Okay, we have time for this last question, and then per our agenda, I have to cut this off.
Okay, thank you. My name is Bill Spangler. I've been on the lake, Cardinal Court area for 40 years. My question is, and we've talked about 67,000 cubic feet of sediment came into the lake. And we're going to, do I understand we're going to remove 80,000? Correct?
Correct.
That's what so that's a net gain at $3 or $4 million of what, 13 or 14,000 cubic yards? I mean, it's in different places, I understand that, but containment, you just don't seem to talk enough about containment. I mean, that's a lot of money for a gain of 13,000 cubic yards.
67,000 cubic yards came into the lake. Of that, 31,000 is in the bays. The other is sitting in the main body of the lake, which we're not going to dredge. But we are removing 95,000 cubic yards, so we're removing 60 in addition to the 31 that's sitting in the bays right now.
But didn't most of it come in through the entrance to the lake through Highway F?
Through Highway F and the county boat landing, yes.
So will that still remain boatable? I mean, so you've got a good part of that came right in there. Are you going to dredge that full bay? I'm not in that bay. I'm in a deep part of the lake. But
We're proposing to dredge both of those channels to 6 feet to get that sediment out.
So that's part of the 80,000?
Yes. 95,000.
Still don't understand 67 versus 80,000 coming out and how that's going to settle. But, I mean, I'm for the benefit of the lake, but if we don't do containment, we'll be at this before 10 years again.
We're removing 95,000 cubic yards at 3,000 cubic yards per year. We're good for 30-plus years. And I believe that 3,000 number is high because that study was done a number of years ago. As part of the full lake management plan we're doing next year, we will get a revised number. I think we're looking more at 40 to 50 years, barring 100-year rain events. And we'll do what we can about those. We collected information on those, and we have approached the county, the town, in some places to figure out how to try and remediate those. So we're working on it. We don't have all the answers. Yes, we agree we have to fix those problems, but we also have to fix the lake too. Okay, that's the end of our question and comment period. Ken?
I think the motion has been moved and seconded. I would like to call the question on the resolution that's on the screen up there.
Thank you. Can I have a second? This gentleman here. All in favor of calling the question signify by aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. It is now time to vote. The way the voting process will work, you were all handed a stack of ballots. Fortunately, we did not require any other written ballot today, so you will use the top pink ballot. Mark yes or no, fold it in half, and pass it to the aisles, and our election judges will collect them on the aisles. For those of you, I know some of you have time constraints. If you would like to vote and leave, you can put either once you hand in your ballot, or you can put it in the ballot box over here if you'd like to vote and leave. Thank you. The other ballots were in case we needed to do a written ballot for some other purpose. There were no issues that came up that required a written ballot. We were just trying to be prepared. If we needed a written ballot, we had them available. Yeah. Okay, I have the magic numbers. Yes, 284. No, 59. Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. Here's our website. As we progress the project along, we'll be putting updates out there for everybody to see what's happening. Thank you very much. I declare this meeting adjourned.